Today is the day. Today we make the change. We're going to start calling ourselves, I'm going to start calling the segment the daily summation instead of calling it the 5-minute summation because I'm having such a hard time staying within a 5-minute time frame when I do what I'm doing. Today is Monday. It is the 28th, if I'm not mistaken, of September of 2020. And I want excuse me, I wanted to wish you a good morning. Hope you're doing well today. And today we're going to spend our time talking about the second chapter of Noam Chomsky's Understanding Power, the Indispensable Chomsky. And I wanted to say, first of all, I wanted to begin by apologizing for taking as long as I did in the blog post on this to discuss the idea that I wasn't going to be able to fit everything in. Full disclosure, my reason for doing it, you may question, but the reason was that I didn't want for people to think that I had done a complete job of encapsulating the chapter. What I did was took the things that I thought were the most important parts of the chapter, and those were the things that I talked about. So talking about what actually is in this chapter, first of all, I want to warn you, it is a full chapter. And again, the thing about it is what's spoken about is sort of a talk that I assume Chomsky led, in which he sits and has people basically ask him questions. He might start with something himself and then have people sort of come in with questions afterwards. But the point is that's sort of the format, and as such, the subject for the thing is kind of fluid. I don't want to take too much time here. I just want to explain where things are. Okay, so a lot of people know Dr. Noam Chomsky as an individual who's very involved in the concept of linguistics, right? And so it's not surprising that what he talks about somewhat in this setting in this chapter, is sort of how linguistics are used to, you could sort of say, forward political agendas. So he uses the example of containment. And what he says about containment is the word containment is used to mean something that it really isn't. It seems to be being used to mean forwarding U.S. agendas as opposed to, for example, keeping what was at the time the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics at bay. I would argue that it actually was furthering both purposes, but Chomsky's assertion was that using the same sort of logic that was being used by the people who were using the term containment, the Nazi Germany could have been said to be attempting to use containment not against, but in order to protect themselves from their neighbors, and in their view, right or wrong against the Jews. And I'm not saying that Chomsky is saying they were right in saying that. Rather, I'm saying his intent was to say that is what they could say if they were to use the same sort of meaning for containment that was used with the USSR and with communism more generally. He moves on to talk about another couple concepts. They are radical and moderate, I think was the other one. And he goes on to say that moderate is doing what the United States says you ought to do, and that radical is doing something other than that. He then talks about the idea of the term peace process, and his implication is that this is very much the same sort of thing. And I may be getting these out of order, so don't think that I'm necessarily trying to kind of give you a timeline of the chapter as much as sort of give you a rough overview of what's going on. So the term peace process, he says, is basically the same sort of thing. If you use the term peace process, if you're doing what the United States says you ought to do, then it's a peace process. From there, he defines the opposite, which is it's not a peace process. So, for example, what some of the things that happened in the Middle East and in Central America were not considered peace processes because they did not forward the agenda that the United States would have forwarded. And I'm not going to get into opinions anyway, but I'm not going to by any means say that everything that Mr. Chomsky said was incorrect. That aside, I'm not going to try to validate all of it. Keep in mind that what I'm telling you about, what I'm talking about, is Mr. Chomsky's ideas about what's going on. So he moves from there, and he talks about the idea that the poverty that one sees in the United States today is not similar to what happened in the Great Depression, because in the Great Depression, it's his contention that poor people had hope even if they didn't, even if they were poor, even if they were having hard times. And he essentially maintains that that's not the case today. One of the things that he maintains is a reason for that he states as a potential reason for that. And you have to understand, he's kind of iffy. He's not really sure, based on what I'm seeing, that he knows what's going on. But he states a couple of things. And one of the things that he states is the idea that people coming into the United States and people coming into the cities in the United States from more rural areas are having a hard time finding work, because most of the manufacturing, or a lot of the manufacturing at least, has moved from the United States to third world countries and other places, mostly third world countries, to be fair. And his point is that because we've shifted to a somewhat more technologically based way of doing business, people come to the United States, people come from the rural areas, and they're not really equipped or qualified to take on those technological jobs that currently exist in the country. He goes from there. One of the things that he talks about as well is the idea that the world economy is changing, and he makes the presentation that two things seem to be affecting this. The first being that the world economy is changing, and that it means that the way things are managed, dealt with, and controlled is changing as well. The second thing that he talks about is the idea that things need to be done environmentally, and that those things are changing how people look at life, the world, and so forth. He maintains that there's a real possibility for a climate catastrophe of one kind or another. And I want to maintain again that that's Dr. Chomsky's viewpoint, and doesn't necessarily show you my own. In fact, I'm going to do everything I can to keep my opinions out of what I'm saying. The next thing he talks about, I think, regardless whether it's the next, again, is the idea that the United States is an empire-building entity, and that what they're trying to do is make it so that they have governments that are friendly to the U.S. agenda and keep them from becoming independent, so that the U.S. can maintain and assert a level of control over those entities. And again, everything, I want to make clear a couple of things. One, everything I'm saying here, I'm trying very hard to maintain what Dr. Chomsky is saying in this second chapter. I am not telling you what I think, or I'm trying very hard not to do that. I'm trying very hard to tell you what it is that Chomsky thinks, what it is that he is saying, and that's very important. The second thing I want to make very clear is that I'm doing a fast and high over this chapter. I'm at 30,000 feet, I promise, because I'm not able in the space that I've got, either in my videos or in my blog post, to give you a real comprehensive list of things Chomsky says in this chapter. Okay, so I want you to understand, the reason I bring this up is not that I'm upset about it. It's that I want you to understand that there may be things in that chapter that I don't mention, and that the only real way that you're going to get to where you see those things is to take the time to read it and see what you think, what conclusions you come to, and then you can decide whether or not what I'm saying about it is a fair assessment. Okay, well, I'm almost at 10 minutes, and I'm going to try really hard to keep below 10 if I can, not in the whole video, because I've got my little spot in the end that tells about my social media and so forth. So I wanted to wish you a good day. Have a good Monday. Have a good week. We're getting a little bit of rain here, but hopefully it'll clear up over the course of time. We're definitely starting to see some fall weather. All of that being said, I hope you have a wonderful day and a great week. Thank you for tuning in and watching this. this video. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more content from me of various kinds, you can go a number of places. One of those places is my blog, which is blogs.kpschubert.com. I have a Twitter, a Parler, and a Minds.com account, and my handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That is @kpschubert. You can also see my Facebook page, which is Kurt's Religion and Politics. I also have a YouTube account and a Rumble account, and have a channel on each of those. Again, it's the Kurt's Religion and Politics channel. And finally, if you want to support me, you can go to Patreon, and you can find me under Kurt's Religion and Politics there as well. Thanks again for watching this video, and have a wonderful day.